Didn't get this packet. Everybody here, Paul's got a couple back there he'll pass out. And if you didn't get this note card, you probably didn't get the packet either. So anybody missing the note card? Okay, put the note card down and don't look at it for a while. We'll talk about it at the end. The packet we're going to look at towards the beginning here, but this is going to have a relatively comprehensive list of the Proverbs related to honesty and dishonesty, lying, truth-telling, all of those things broken down into 6 categories. I may have missed some. I don't know. Tell me if I did, and we can add them. But I thought this would be a good resource. We're not going to look at every proverb on here. For the sake of our study, the ones that are highlighted, we're going to go through those tonight. The rest of these, I hope maybe you'll take some time and read them maybe this evening, tomorrow, this week, as you reflect on what we talked about tonight. As we continue our summer series, Wisdom from Proverbs, that's the laser, we're going to spend the first part of our class this evening with Proverbs chapter 20 and verse number 7. Proverbs 20 and verse 7. The righteous who walks in his integrity, blessed are his children after him. The righteous man, the one who seeks to live right before God, who walks, this is a continual state of existence, not a singular point in time decision, he walks in integrity. When you think about integrity, what comes to mind for you? How would you define that to somebody? Yeah, doing the right thing when no one's around to see you do it. Trustworthy. Not hypocritical.
I think about integrity as like there's a structure that has integrity. That means it can be counted on, depended on. It's going to be resilient. And so if we apply that to things we're talking about, can I be counted on? Am I dependable?
Yeah, dependability. That's a good word. Anything else? Honest. Great. That's where we're headed tonight is honesty. When you think about integrity, it's the idea of wholeness or honesty, the idea of consistency, being the same person in public as you are in private. It's without duplicity or the idea of being two-faced, or without hypocrisy, the idea of pretending to be righteous when you really might not be. The person who's seeking to please God, to live right before Him in all their interactions and everything that they do, they're walking in integrity, and that their children are blessed because of it. Blessed are His children after Him. How might they be blessed?
Well, when we walk in integrity, our choices will be better, and that can have a positive ripple effect upon our children. It also gives them a godly example to model after as well.
So we make better choices, we set up a better godly example that they will hopefully model. What else?
The parents will be consistent in all their interactions and reactions.
Consistent in interactions and reactions, yeah.
There are far fewer consequences for the children to bear from a man who's righteous in his family. It doesn't subject his children to those consequences. I mean, it does have an impact.
Absolutely, fewer consequences.
It's possible, probable, that his children will follow his footsteps.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I think if a person is righteous, a parent is righteous, I think the kids are not going to be confused. Because if you say one thing and do something else, the kids are going to be confused because they're going to say, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
They say A, but they're doing B.
Sure thing. Yeah. Children really, in this context, they're blessed, I think, largely because they grow up in safe, stable environments where they can trust their parents. They see honesty and faithfulness modeled in everyday situations. It teaches them how to live rightly. And ultimately, they experience a household grounded in God's ways, learning to honor Him in their own lives and interactions. Now, walking in integrity doesn't just honor God, but it has real effects on the people around us. I'd argue that your faithful living helps your children thrive spiritually, emotionally, and socially. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time with the importance of honesty. That's our topic for this evening. We're going to look at it from the lens of leaving a lasting legacy for our children. I want us to think about this first from the standpoint of what do the Proverbs teach about honesty? That's the packet. Second, we're going to talk about how dishonesty in the home negatively affects our kids. And we'll wrap up talking about how to build a culture of honesty in our homes. If you don't have kids, that does not mean this doesn't apply. I want you to think about this. Maybe you don't have kids in your home right now, but the kids here in this church family, they're impacted by the decisions that we make, the example of honesty or dishonesty that they see in our lives. So even if they aren't in your home, they're still impacted by you. So the lesson still applies to everybody. There's going to be plenty of time to speak up, but we're going to go pretty fast. So if I overlook you, it's not intentional. Great, get my attention. Hold on to your comment. We'll get it. As we start, what do the Proverbs teach about honesty? Well, first of all, they teach that God hates dishonesty. In Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 22, Proverbs 12 verse 22 says, "Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are His delight." Dishonesty is not just wrong, but it's in opposition to who God is. Lies and deceit are described as an abomination, something that brings forth feelings of disgust or hatred. This shows how seriously God views truth. In contrast, those who live faithfully and honestly bring God joy. Honesty honors God, and it reflects His character in our daily lives. God hates dishonesty. We also should recognize that truth brings stability, while lies, on the other hand, destroy. In Proverbs chapter 12 again, just a few verses before that, in verse 19, we read, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment." Truth creates lasting stability. Words spoken in honesty endure, and they build trust. But lies are temporary, and ultimately will collapse. Deceit may work for a moment, but ultimately it'll fail, leaving behind broken relationships and damaged reputations. Living truthfully safeguards us, but those around us as well. Honesty builds trust. It has a life-saving effect. If we go on here in Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 25, we read, "A truthful witness saves lives, but one who breathes out lies is deceitful." Honesty has real-world impacts. A truthful person can protect, they can guide, they can even save others. Lies, they harm and they mislead. Speaking the truth builds trust and fosters safety in relationships, in our homes, in our churches, in our communities. So living with honesty demonstrates care for others, and again, it reflects God's very nature. Swinging the other way again. Dishonesty, it corrupts character. In Proverbs chapter 10 and verse 9, we see integrity again. "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out." Walking in integrity provides confidence and stability. When crooked and deceitful behavior, it eventually leads to exposure and consequences, and that erodes a person's character and their security. Living honestly aligns our lives with God's ways, and in doing so, it protects us and our reputation. Back the other way. If dishonesty corrupts character, we need to acknowledge that honesty is a mark of righteous character. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 5, "The righteous hates falsehood, but the wicked brings shame and disgrace." This is a defining characteristic of those who are righteous Those who follow God speak truth. They reject lies. Dishonesty is wickedness. It leads to nothing but embarrassment and shame. Choosing truth shows who you really are, and it distinguishes God's people from the wicked people around them. Finally, on this list, deceit and slander, they tear down relationships. First of all, we need to note that deceit and slander are very much related. So how we talk about other people matters. Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 13, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. Relationships are harmed and trust is destroyed when gossip and lies exist. Sharing secrets and speaking ill of others breaks bonds and spreads conflict. Keeping promises and being trustworthy protects others. It strengthens connections. It fosters respect and healthy, lasting relationships. So much could be said about the Proverbs and what they say in and of themselves about honesty. But I want you to think about this question. Proverbs teaches that integrity brings security, guidance, and blessing. It teaches that dishonesty ultimately destroys. This is a very broad question, could go a lot of different directions. But in practical terms, everyday living, what would it look like for integrity to guide every word that we speak, every decision that we make? What would you say to that? JD?
For practicality's sake, I would say, like, for when you're at work, to me, that would look like admitting when you can't do something or perhaps are uncertain of a particular project or product, and also not trying to puff yourself up, make yourself look better by claiming you can do something that you evidently cannot do, or just work with someone just to take care of their work, or do everything in your power to throw someone else equally qualified for, say, promotion under the bus, just so you can hatch the bets in your favor.
Sure. Yeah, what else?
Steve?
This may sound funny, but I think it would be a lot less talking. But truthfully, I think it would also kind of slow things down, because I would be in thoughtful consideration when I open my mouth, thoughtful consideration when I make decisions, and less rash, and maybe less instinctive, and give myself time to consider, because it's when I don't give myself time to consider that.
Yeah. Sure. Zach?
I'll springboard off of that. It would be humbling, just because you have to come to terms with the fact that's pointed out earlier of your limitations. You would become aware of where you lose control, or what you are weak with, what you do or don't know, when you get angry. Those kinds of things, you have to face them for what they are, and admit when you need help a whole lot more. And it would just be not only quieter, it'd be humble.
Sure. Stephen?
Our words and our actions would match.
Yeah.
When we said in practical terms, what would it look like for integrity? We also have to think integrity for what? I know some people are vegetarians and that's all they speak of and that's what their decisions are based upon. But our integrity should be in God, so it would require us to know the Word. To know Him.
Absolutely.
It would also be demonstrated if we are willing to admit when we were wrong or unable to follow through on something that we had said we would do. And we're just open about those failures.
Yeah. Hear a lot of comments related to self-awareness, being aware of ourselves, our limitations, our strengths, our weaknesses. When you think about those 6 things that we had up on the board that are in your packet, is there anything that stands out to you that maybe we're missing about honesty from the Proverbs? Would you add to it? Would you say something different? Are we missing a lesson?
this is pretty thorough. The only thought I had was Proverbs 35, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And when it comes to honesty, that's where we have to trust in Him. What will this person think? What may be the ramifications? That's where trusting in the Lord comes into play.
When is honesty the hardest? It's a broad question, but Stephen?
Whenever I've made a mistake or sinned willfully,
Sure.
Something I've done that was wrong and I have to be accountable for, kind of confess. That's honesty. You're confessing something that's hard to do sometimes.
Yeah, admitting when we're wrong or had willfully made a mistake, yeah. Chris?
Whatever the comment needs to be possible confrontation or difference of opinions.
Sure. Yeah. Not everybody may be in agreement. My mind goes, a little bit along the lines with what you guys have said. When honesty is the hardest, when it may impact me negatively. Personal example here, it's a silly example, but a few months ago, our landlord, he was foreclosed on, and a new owner came in and bought the house. And so we're still renting from the same house, but from a different management company. And the company came in, and we had this interaction, a spoken interaction between me and the new owner. And I misunderstood something that he said, and the way I responded to his question had indicated to him that I had paid rent for whatever month it was at the time to the previous owner. And so I start getting these messages, oh, hey, we're not going to charge you rent for June since you already paid, the other guy. Kind of didn't say anything immediately. I'm thinking, how did we get to this conclusion? I'm reflecting on it. I'm thinking, well, this is great. I could save, a month's rent. This, it kind of pays me back because this other guy took off with my security deposit. This is my security deposit back. And then I get another text and another interaction, and we're having another conversation, and they say it again. And it kind of catches me off guard. I'm thinking, what did I say to them to make them think I paid this guy rent? I started thinking about it, and in reality, it was a misunderstanding. But now what are they asking for? Documentation. By the way, we just need to make sure that you actually paid this guy rent. It's like, whoop, screech, come to a halt. I got to pay these people. My intention was not to lie, to deceive, to, skirt out of a month's rent. But it's situations like that. It'd be really easy. That's a month's rent. That makes a difference sometimes, right? It'd be nice to not pay your mortgage 1 month. Those are the situations that come to my mind that make honesty hard. But what I want us to think about tonight is whether it's those hard situations or maybe we're just habitual liars. I hope not. I don't think anybody in here is that way. But if that's the case, I want us to think about, in real terms, how does dishonesty, whether it's in those hard situations, whether it's willful, easy situations, little white lies, how does that impact our kids? As I put this section together, 6 more points. We'll stay consistent for a while. 6 more points. I spent time, there's somewhere between 10 and 15 studies that I referenced in putting this together. I'm not going to tell you everything that's in those studies. I didn't read all of the studies. I pulled pieces that demonstrate these effects. So I want to present them to you. We'll have some questions along the way for thought. Before that, I saw Sean.
I would think that being dishonest at all, it builds upon itself. The snowball effect of a little white lie is that the next time it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And then next time you wouldn't have done that 2 weeks ago, but you already did a little bit this time. Oh, what's a little more? It will always build upon itself, and then as it keeps building, it gets harder and harder to stop.
Sure. It's a snowball effect to that sort of behavior. Absolutely. As we think about dishonesty in the home and its effect on our kids, I first want to call your mind to Exodus chapter 20. In Exodus chapter 20, verses 4 through 6 here, what we see is God's giving the law here, and these are the 10 Commandments. This verse has nothing to do with honesty versus dishonesty, but there's an idea here that I want us to think about for just a minute together. In Exodus chapter 20 and verse 4, we read, "You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments." Maybe there's a way that honesty connects to idolatry. That's not the point of what we're talking about here. But it's this phrase, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generation. In no way is this saying that the guilt of sin is passed from parent to child. But it's the idea that there are consequences to our sins. There's consequences to choosing to break the commandments. And it has effects on our kids. And not just our kids, but our grandkids and great-grandkids. There's cycles of sin. There's generational effects. This has been true for all of time. And when we think about honesty today, when parents lie, when they deceive or act without integrity, children will internalize those behaviors. They learn that dishonesty is acceptable, maybe even necessary. And that shapes their choices, their trust, and their relationship for years to come. With that in mind, I'd suggest to you that one of the first ways that dishonesty in the home affects our kids is there's an erosion of trust and attachment styles. Honest, consistent parenting lays the foundation for children to feel safe, secure, and connected. When parents are dishonest, when they're inconsistent, it weakens trust, it damages relationships, not just between the parent and the child, but between the child and their peers. Research has shown that children naturally lie less to their parents than to strangers. Seems like a good thing. But when there's dishonesty in the home, it blurs that boundary, and the dishonesty creeps in from the children to the parents. Over time, children raised in dishonest environments will struggle to form deep, trusting relationships, carrying challenges and connection and attachment well into adulthood. How do you think a child's ability to trust their parents affects their ability to trust God, to trust friends, or to have trust and healthy attachment in future relationships? I want to spend time talking about this one, but I want to reflect on that for just a minute.
Well, the father figure both mom and dad play a big role. The father figure plays a big role as well. With, some have had a hard time thinking about God as their father because their physical father was bad in some shape or form, or dishonest, or not trustworthy, and so it could potentially get in that way, or make things more challenging to trust God. The father that they can see physically, is not doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah. The parent-child relationship might not be the most important physical relationship, but it's probably the most foundational. It shapes so much about who the children are. We can talk about that for a long time.
People often marry too who they see their mom. People often will marry women that may be similar to their mom.
Sure.
Women do that sometimes with men who are similar to their dads. That may not always be a bad thing per se, but sometimes it's that cycle that you mentioned that, I guess this is what a man is supposed to look like, this is what a woman is supposed to look like, and go on that same path.
Absolutely. Well, with that in mind, children who grow up in dishonest homes will model dishonesty and continue its cycle. Children learn more from what their parents do than what they say. We know that to be true in a lot of ways. When parents lie, even when it's subtle, children notice and will often imitate that behavior. This creates a cycle of dishonesty that continues across generations. Research shows that parental lying strongly predicts children's own lying and other negative behaviors, distorting their understanding of right and wrong. And over time, dishonesty becomes normalized, and children may adopt it as an acceptable way to navigate life. Children learn from us and how we handle the truth, even in small interactions. I'm going to go past this question for time, but I want us to think about that. All of our interactions, however big or small they are, our children are seeing, they're learning something. And we need to be careful about what we're teaching in those. This next one, early lying behavior and cognitive development. Essentially what this means is just lying begins early. There's studies that show that preschoolers, I believe the age was 3.5, they'll begin as early as maybe 3.5 to at least deny misbehavior. No, that wasn't me. The studies have been like leaving a cookie on the table and leaving the room, telling them not to eat it, coming back. Clearly they took the cookie, it's not there anymore, and the kids, no, I didn't do that. But the research has shown that when the children grow up in homes where dishonesty is prevalent, the lying starts earlier. But the negative outcome, outside of just that, is that it influences how children learn to deceive and rationalize lying. And when that's planted from a young age, as they grow, this pattern of honesty or dishonesty in the home, it shapes not only their behavior, but their cognitive skills and their ability to navigate social situations. What's right, what's wrong? Okay, well, this was okay when I was 3.5, now I'm whatever, fill in the blank. And they learn to justify, and they get better at it. That's the other thing that's interesting about that, right? They're not just going to be bad at lying, they're going to get good at it if it's normal in their home around them. This is a very similar question. We're going to move past that as well. I want us to think about this one for a minute. There's really two fronts to this question or to this thought that I want to spend a little bit of time on. When children grow up in homes where dishonesty is prevalent, one of probably the biggest consequences is this idea of anxiety and emotional consequences that are prevalent. And you see the word punishment up there. Because what happens a lot of times, or seems to be anyway, is in these situations, especially when there's inconsistency, when there's dishonesty modeled from parent to child, and then child exhibits that same behavior, the parent decides it's time to correct this behavior. We're gonna get this right. We're gonna fix them. I want to suggest to you that how we respond to our kids, it matters. And I know you guys know that, you believe that, you demonstrate it. But this idea that there's harsh and inconsistent punishment, that backfires. It actually encourages children to lie more. They become more skilled at deception, not wanting to reap the consequences of their actions. Research shows that children raised in homes marked by dishonesty or unpredictable discipline experience higher anxiety, emotional instability, and internal conflict. Those with externalizing behavior problems tend to lie more and exhibit lower moral reasoning. Over time, this creates a cycle. Dishonesty leads to emotional turmoil, which in turn fuels further deception and behavioral issues. I didn't write the verse down, I should have. We're not here to refute, does the rod work? Okay, the Bible's very clear. Discipline is important. But what I do want to think about this evening is how do we correct our children in a way that encourages honesty rather than makes them afraid to tell the truth? I do want to pause on this one for a minute. Zach?
You can't put them in a position to where they're going to be encouraged by it, right? If you know that they did this thing, you saw it or witnessed it or whatever, don't ask them, did they do it? Confront them with it, rather than, oh, did you do this thing? Then they say no, then what do you do then, right? Do you argue with them? Do you punish them, or do they get out of it? In which case, then you're they're approving of their lie in a way, you know. Don't put them in a position to where they're gonna have to, or want to sin.
Sure. What other thoughts?
I thought about Peter and Jesus. Peter lied 3 times. And, with respect to our children, obviously there will be consequences and things will have to change, but also helping them to see that they can overcome it, that they can continue to improve and do better.
Yeah. On the other side of the equation, a child should be, in my view, receive stronger punishment if they lie about what they did. You know, if your child knows that, hey, I tell the truth, because if I lie, that's also wrong. I mean, that's another offense against, what is right. And so my expectation is that no matter what I ask, that you're going to tell me the truth. If you don't, I find out, your punishment's going to be worse than if you would have told me the truth to begin with.
So how would you differentiate between what we might think of as harsh punishment and strong punishment?
Well, there's all kinds of ways to discipline. So I mean, it would just be more. I mean, it depends on the kid too. I mean, there's a lot that goes into deciding the punishment. So I don't know if I can say this is it. This is the exact equation to follow. But it may be a longer punishment. It may be more, less access to something. Maybe more chores. But I mean, whatever it is, the punishment is going to be worse if you lie in association with what you did wrong to begin with. I mean, if I see something and you're telling me something else happened and it's obvious that's not what happened, even if I didn't ask, you're digging yourself a hole. Your timeout might be worse. You might be grounded for longer. You might, whatever the case is, it's going to be more than it would have otherwise.
Sure. What other thought? Yeah.
I was thinking that effective correction really starts with the foundation of trust, and you've already alluded to that some tonight, that trust is really based on building a relationship with the child where the child knows that you care about them, they're getting affection, they understand that mom and dad really do want me to be successful, and they're helping me, and they're showing love to me, and hopefully the child doesn't come into a situation where they find any pleasure in displeasing the parent in the first place, and so when they make a mistake or they find themselves lying or whatever it is because they're fearful, there's a sense of regret, as opposed to, sadly in our society, there's many difficult home situations where I don't think the kids even really care what the parents think about them and their behavior, and so correcting that child, the parent's going to have no real positive effect.
Wait.
It's been mentioned before already tonight, but consistency, kind of what Kyle was saying, that expectations already been set, standards already been set. If you do these things, this is your punishment. We tell our kids all the time, if they're dishonest, this is what you were getting punished for because you did this. But now, this is your next punishment. It's worse for the lie or the dishonesty. We separate them.
Yeah.
But they already know that beforehand. It's not just out of one thing. And then you have to be consistent in how you approach them. You're talking about strong and harsh discipline. You have to be consistent in your self-control and not losing your temper. Because sometimes you get really, really upset with them in those moments. But you can't lose your control as your punishment. Right? Because then I think that jumps over into the harsh. Because you're not in control of the situation. As long as you're consistent in keeping self-control and consistent in expectations, the punishment can be very severe. It hasn't moved over to the harsh.
Yes, Zach.
I like what Kyle said because he touched on something that I think is at the root of it. There needs to be, it is based on relationship. It is based on that foundational trust there. There has to be room to answer the question, how do we correct our children in a way that encourages honesty rather than making them afraid to tell the truth? there has to be an understanding that there is a bridge to reconciliation. Instead of damned if you do and damned if you don't. If they know, if I tell the truth, I'm about to get tore up, and if I lie, it's just going to be worse. Well, they didn't bank on maybe I can get away with it if I lie.
Yeah.
Because if telling the truth means a severe punishment, they have to know there is a right way forward, and that way leads to reconciliation. That way will lead back to peace. If not, then they don't see a win. They don't see any way forward in that situation. So we've got to start on that foundational level of this is what we want, and we're all on the same side here. It's not me against you. It is us against the one who wants to do you wrong. So how do we bridge this? How do we get you back where you need to be? And would you say that exactly to the kid? Use your own judgment in the situation. But to me, that's what makes this work. Is there a bridge to reconciliation, or is it just a matter of, is the focus on punishment? I think that's part of it, but I do think the focus should be on how do we get you back to where you ought to be.
Notice I framed this one as a question, not as a teaching moment, because I want to learn from you guys on this one. Chandler is just one. I don't have the experience with her lying to me yet. I don't know what to do with all of that. But some of her cousins were in town this week, and I was talking about this class to Allie's sister and her husband, and she shared that here just recently, Reagan's the oldest, she's 7. When they leave the house, they lock just the front door handle sometimes. Like if they're just running out quick, they don't use the deadbolt, just the handle. And the girls know that. And they were outside playing, and the handle had gotten locked, and they decided they needed to get back in. Well, Aubrey never knew what happened, but the next time she comes home and is trying to unlock the door, she can't get it unlocked. Like the key won't go in the keyhole, she can't figure out what's wrong. And she just turned and asked the girls, like, did y'all do something to this? Like, she just wanted to know so they could solve the problem, fix it. Or, I have no idea what happened. And it was like weeks later. And Reagan was getting ready to go to bed, and they put her down, and she goes, Aubrey had been out like on a walk with her friends, so Hunter had put them down to bed, and she stayed awake until her mom got home. Said, Mom, I need you to come tuck me in. So she goes and she, tucks her in bed, whatever she's talking to her. She said, Mom, so a few weeks ago, we were out playing, we came home, the door was locked, and so I got a piece of mulch, and I think she thought she was going to pick the lock. She was going to get it and figure out how to unlock it. I listened to that story, right? Reagan lied. I don't know what happened. She had a guilty conscience. You see, that situation's different than if Aubrey had watched her do it, like Zach was talking about, watched her do it. What happened? I have no idea. I understand there's judgment, there's discretion. I share that story just to tell you, I don't know what to do with all of that yet. That's why I ask and look for your insight and wisdom on these things. As we move on, for the sake of time, dishonesty in the home, it has an effect on a child's moral development and identity formation. The environments children grow up in, it profoundly shapes their sense of right and wrong. In homes where dishonesty is common, children's moral understanding can become distorted, and they may experience identity confusion. This basically means that children may justify unethical behavior and struggle to express themselves authentically in a right moral sense, carrying these challenges into adulthood. We're just going to skip that one altogether. Finally, this is kind of the climax of what we've all been talking about tonight in this section. There's an effect on their trust climate, and that has long-term effects. What that basically means is there's an atmosphere that parents create at home, and that has a lasting influence on children's behavior and relationships. Warm, honest, and consistent parenting fosters fewer lies, stronger bonds, and openness, while frequent parental dishonesty is linked to lasting maladaptive behaviors, emotional struggles, and difficulty forming trusting relationships. There's more research talking. Again, why do you think the effects of dishonesty at home, see I can't spell, at home don't just stay in childhood, and how might those experiences shape the way someone relates to others as an adult? I want to reflect on that, think about that tonight. As we think about building a culture of honesty in our homes, this slide, text is going to be kind of small. This is the note card. Okay, Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart from it. Dishonesty in the home has lasting and damaging effects on our kids. So how do we set them up for success? How do we train them up in the way they should go? How do we build this culture of honesty? Again, this doesn't just apply to our homes. This applies to our church, to our communities. We want to be influences of honesty for all those around us. But I'd suggest to you first that we need to teach honesty. We need to teach it. We need to teach our kids that honesty honors God. Proverbs 3, verse 3, let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Honesty is not just a moral issue, it's a spiritual issue. It's one that reflects God's nature. God's nature is truth. Titus 1, verse 2, we know that God does not lie. God who never lies. We're called to imitate that God. Honesty honors God. We need to teach them that. We need to teach our kids that God values truth. Psalm 51 and verse 6. David writes, behold, you delight in truth in the inward being, and you teach me wisdom in the secret heart. Honesty matters to God. And truth is not just what we say or do, it's really a reflection of who we become as God changes us from the inside out. David recognizes this. This is a prayer of repentance. David wants to be changed. He wants truth to be his very core. We think about this. This is the prayer after a sin with Bathsheba. There's lying, there's deception, there's all sorts of evil that happens here. David wants to be changed with the truth, and he's praying that to God. We need to teach our kids about honesty. There's more that we could say about that, but we also should show our kids what honesty looks like. We need to be a model of integrity. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 9, this is one of my favorites from this class. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. I like this one as it relates to kids, just because it's a reminder. Our kids are watching. They know. They will see and understand when we lie. So we need to be a model of integrity. They imitate what they see more than what they hear. So if we lie to them, they will likely begin to do the same. Avoid little white lies. Proverbs chapter 4, verse 24, put away from you crooked speech and put devious talk far from you. When we think about white lies, we often think of them as polite lies. We lie to be polite, to be nice for some reason or another. Obviously, put all of it far from you. But when we think about it as it relates to our kids, we need to understand that our kids they can't differentiate between what we might think of as a polite lie and what might be harmful deception. And they probably see lying the way God sees lying. A lie is a lie. That's just not true. They know it. They recognize it. So let's not even go there with our kids. We need to show them that we keep our promises. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 4, pay what you vow. It is better that you should not vow than that you should vow and not pay. Tell our kids something, follow through. And I'd argue that if you can't follow through for whatever reason, this would say, don't say it in the first place, which is correct. But sometimes we find ourselves in that situation. We've committed to something to our kids we can't follow through on for some reason. We need to admit that to them. We messed up. That leads to this last one here. Apologize when you're wrong. James chapter 5, verse 16, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person has great power as it is working. We need to model confession and repentance to our kids. Let them be a part of that process. Confess to them. Pray with them. Let them know what humility looks like. Humility is part of honesty, and they need to see that. And this last one, we're just going to blow through these really quick. I'm going to put them all up here on the screen because we have less than a minute left. They're all on the card, so you can read these at home. We need to make honesty safe. Fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath. We need to make sure they understand there's real consequences to lying. We need to praise truth-telling. We need to talk about integrity often. Don't wait for the crisis to happen to decide we need to talk about it. Let's start now. I'll leave you with this question as you walk out of here. This question. If you could change just one habit or pattern in your home this week to help build or reinforce a culture of honesty in your home, what would that be? Think about that, and hopefully some things that we've talked about tonight have been helpful. Thank you all for your participation tonight.